Well, we can see you, Don, but I can't. Can we hear you?
Yeah. I can hear you. All right, but now I can no longer see you for some reason. Now I was coming in, but then it just suddenly went out. First of all, am I right side up though?
Yes, you
You're
are.
right side up.
Okay. Hey, I've got video now.
And we can't hear you.
All right. Hey now, coming in. Oh,
Your Wi-Fi must be acting up.
yeah.
I
Right.
I can hear you and see you.
Okay. I'm showing on my monitor some lovely sepia tones.
You are in sepia.
Yep. Hi.
Hello.
Okay, so now, if I'm looking normal to you guys, whatever normal is.
You look normal.
Okay. I'll take it, especially on a Monday. Okay, just a second. Right back.
Just so you all know, a friendly reminder, this meeting's being recorded and live.
Hey.
And the other is to cut off background noise. People muted their microphones till they want to speak. Okay, Raj, you called this meeting and it's 9 o'clock.
I think Steph is got the agenda and is actually running the meeting in terms of moving us through. So I believe Annette was probably going to start with an overview of the water system. Is that correct, Steph?
I think that was going to be you, but I can, okay, I've got the.
I'm happy to do that as well. If you bring it up to the PowerPoint, we're going to start with going just over the rate structure and annual consumption, but I believe Annette had prepared that information.
Yeah, so it's all in the PowerPoint. Welcome everybody. Thank you to the committee members for being here. And thank you especially for the community members as well. I'll just do a share screen of the PowerPoint that staff has prepared. And we'll ask, can everyone see that okay? Does everyone see the PowerPoint okay?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
it's fine here too.
Raj, you want to, so here we go.
So it's kind of an overview here in terms of what we're going to cover in the meeting today. So we're going to go over, well, first of all, I'd like to start by just welcoming everybody and thank you for attending this meeting. It's actually just, this is the community information meeting. So we will have LAC meetings to go over budget for the upcoming year in the upcoming months here, probably before November anyways, as we progress through our budget cycle for the next 5 years. But in the meantime, today's meeting will be going over the rate structure for the KEB system, the annual consumption figures, And then I'll get into financial reports here. And I believe further down the agenda, Patrick will get into the annual water report to Vancouver Coastal Health. And then Steph has provided information throughout the year, minutes from the various meetings that took place with the KEB, LAC, and council as well. So over to you, Annette.
I can take over from here for the rate structure. This slide gives you an overview of the King Edward Bay rate structure in 2019. There were 26 connected homes and 15 unconnected. The water source is from drilled groundwater wells, and the water meters are read on about the 1st of every month between June and September. The annual flat rate until 2019 for connected lots was $700 and $473 for unconnected lots. And as of January 1st, 2020, there was a slight increase, and the new flat rate now is $800 for connected lots and $500 for unconnected lots. And this flat rate includes an average of about 240 imperial gallons per day. And everything above that, up to over, which is 7,200 gallons to 9,000 gallons per month, is charged at 2 cents. 9,001 gallons to 12,000 gallons is charged at 10 cents per gallon per month, and 12,001 gallons or more is 20 cents per gallon per month. And the bill goes out annually in October. Are there any questions?
I have a more general question. In the agenda, is there a provision for questions from the public and also comments from the public?
Sorry, I can hardly hear you. It was very low.
Okay.
Okay, now it's a bit better.
Okay. When the agenda was put up, I was just wondering if there's space within the agenda for questions for the public and comments from the public. Is that going
There's 15 minutes allotted at the end, 15 minutes for a question period, but staff will be receiving questions throughout the meeting.
Okay.
The meeting is to provide you with the information that you need, so please feel free.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Renee.
I guess just to clarify for that, Steph, questions on the presentation items for clarity, and then more general questions at the end, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
So no more questions on this slide? Okay, I'm going to move on. Here we go. Annual consumption.
So the average annual consumption per connection in 2019 by the King Edward Bay users was 22,266 imperial gallons. This results in a daily average of 61 gallons. And as you can see on the graph, it's slightly less than the year before in 2018. You can see that it was about 70 imperial gallons per day on average in the year before. And the graph shows all the connections and their consumption. So whatever shows as 0 would have been either a new connection or someone who doesn't use the water, who has an alternative, maybe a rainwater collection or something. And it goes up to the highest user uses about approximately a little bit more than 55,000 gallons per year. As I mentioned before, overconsumption during the summer months is everything above 240 gallons per day, as per the bylaw and structure rates. Are there any questions on this consumption slide?
Yes, I was just wondering, what is the horizontal line?
Oh, this
depicting?
shows the average, which is slightly moved up here. It should be a little lower, actually.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
was confusing me. It looks
Yeah.
like it's 28.
Yes, it's. I just
yeah.
noticed that now it's slightly too high. It should show the average annual consumption.
Okay. I suspect it's probably the figures from 2018.
I have pasted in. Yes, I have pasted in the 2018 figures and have
Oh, okay.
probably not taken out the average from then, but it
that's
shows
fine.
that one. Yeah.
Just to comment on what I see then. So I see the median dropping quite a bit.
Yes.
Okay, because the median would then be between 13 and 14 on your x-axis.
Yes.
Okay. And it looks like it's kind of skewed to the left because there's a lot of, I mean, the high consumption then is way over to the right. So it looks to me like the average is coming down quite a bit from 2018. And
It
average,
has
I
come
mean,
down.
just the bulk of people.
It's Allison here. The average, you've got 26 homeowners, occupants. How many of those are full-time versus part-time?
Gee, it's really hard to say, Allison.
I
think most of the residents here are full-time. Wouldn't you say, Renee? Or
Well,
Brian?
in my own case, there's increased time, but I'm not full-time, and I wasn't. We weren't in 2018 and 2019. It's somewhat increased in 2020, but really we've been weekenders for the majority of the time, and I anticipate to return to weekenders as soon as they find an effective vaccine.
So it'll be interesting to see what the 2020 average usage is.
Yeah, I mean, it's in other words, I think what we have here is a very mixed picture with maybe a majority of full-timers.
Can I just ask where the line would be? Our average daily consumption is 61 imperial gallons, which you helpfully offer there. So we're well below the 240 gallons, which starts the penalty rate. Just where on that graph would the penalty rate be seen? And I'm just thinking.
So the
Are any of the people above, in the
would be at 87,600 gallons. So it would be way up where the first above 80,000 gallons.
Is that where your microphone is?
So we're being good boys and girls at the moment. Then that's good.
Job.
Hi, just in my head, I went through the neighborhood. It looks like there's 15 full-time residents out of the 26. And a lot of the people that you might think of as weekenders, people like Brian, for example, he's here a hell of a lot more than just the weekend, but I know he has a residence elsewhere.
We're actually full-time here now.
You are now? Oh, wow, welcome.
And we have been for a while. My wife is retired, so we don't use the other residents very
Okay,
often.
make it 17 out of 26 then. That may be not totally accurate because, of course, I don't have access to everybody's private lives, but that's just who I see around. But I think that the point is that we are a resident community rather than a weekend community. Something for everybody to keep in mind.
I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Well, I guess my only point was when you're looking at consumption data and figuring out if you actually did a hypothetical as well of if everybody was here full time, using maybe a weekend just trying to the 240 maybe, how much would you be using?
Does anybody have any more comments or questions on the consumption graph? Oops, sorry. Or I move on. Okay, I'm moving to the next slide. 2019 operating results.
So the next slide here is the 2019 audited operating results in comparison to budget. And we've also included the 2018 results just to provide context. I'll highlight on the main variances here. So revenues exceeded budgeted revenues by about 15,884. Most of that favorable variance was due to the sale of water to the Blue Water Park system. Consumption of KE by Blue Water Park exceeded the projected budget due to the major leak that everybody's aware of that the Blue Water Park system experienced in July of last year. And after this slide, I'll share my screen and I'll go through the calculation. So what that sale of Blue Water Park is based on recovery of a proportion of the expense. Can we go back to that slide, Steph? Sorry, I'm still not finished with the PowerPoint. Oh, did we lose Steph?
I think Steph's internet may have cut out there.
We'll wait for Steph to join us because most of my comments are going to be relative to, I can bring up a PowerPoint on my slide. Hold on just a sec if you guys will bear with me for just a quick sec.
She's allowed you to share screen.
Share screen was on here, so I should be able to. Let me just bring the PowerPoint up. I don't have it up on my screen because Steph was running it. So bear with me for just a quick sec. Utilities, KEB. 19. KEB. Steph will probably join us before I get to it. Here, I've just
got a text. Oh.
Slideshow from beginning, and then I'm going to just,
She got knocked off, she said, and we still on, but we are.
okay. Are you guys seeing the slideshow or?
No.
No.
Oh, bear with me. Okay, just a quick sec. It just took over my screen here before I shared screen. Share screen.
Oh, it's back.
Okay, there you go. I've got it off of my computer here. So we're on the operating results statement here. And I just finished talking about the sale of water to Blue Water Park. On the operating expenses for 2019 were $42,900. You're not seeing that number on your screen. What I'm doing is I'm summing.
Your share screen disappeared on mine.
That's so strange. Hold on just a second. I wonder, is Steph back?
No.
Okay.
I wonder how many of us actually have the screen.
Are you guys all seeing it again?
Well, if everybody's got downloaded or printed the agenda package, then you can look at it from there. But if otherwise, you've got to figure out how to split screen on the.
I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the operating results.
Yeah, I've got it up, Raj. It's here now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to, let's see if this will work. Start from beginning.
Well, you're on 2019 operating results.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to stay there. Okay. So what I was saying was actually, if I summed up the expenses from the staff compensation line right down to the legal, audit, and insurance, actual expenses are $42,899 versus the budgeted amount of $35,300. So we're $7,600 over budget. And the significant variances are in the rent line. So in the rent and utilities, hydro costs exceeded the budget due to, I'm assuming the hydro costs were due to the running of the pumps. So, and then contract costs actually exceeded the budget due to professional and engineering services from Urban Systems for problem solving during the year. We had no, KEB doesn't have a budget for professional consulting costs, and that resulted in us being over budget as well. And in terms of, I'm going to try and share another screen with you guys. Let me just bring it up here. So in terms of the calculation of, do you want to continue? Yes. Okay, I believe this is the screen I want to share right here. Are you guys seeing basically a calculation of the cost of water that was transferred to Blue Water Park on your screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, so essentially KEB, so this is a calculation of the revenue of sale to Blue Water Park. And the way it works is the total KEB production was 31,354. Of that production, 19,950 cubic meters were consumed by Blue Water Park, which represents 63% of the consumption. So the KEB expenses were 42,899, as I had mentioned earlier. So what we do is attribute 63% of the expenses, or recover 63% of the expenses from Blue Water Park. Hence that resulted in a 27,296 recovery of expenses from Blue Water Park to King Edward Bay. And I'm going back to the PowerPoint presentation. Is that back on your screens? Are there any questions on this particular slide here before I move on to the next financial slide?
Just a comment that's quite a striking proportion of water going to Blue Water Park from KEB. I mean, it looks as if, well, I'm just making that basic point, which is in the slide. It's high.
It was, yes, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say it was quite a bit higher in 2019 from previous years due to the water leak in July.
Yeah.
I believe if I were to look at past, like that was 63%. I believe the previous year was about 42%, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
It was consistent, and that was a little bit higher than previous years as well.
Okay.
What we've got in the budget, I mean, even the 2019 budget here shows 10,000, and we increased that amount to 15,000 in the 2020 budget, as you'll see in a subsequent slide. So it was quite a bit higher in 2019 due to the leak in Blue Water Park.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I have a question too, Raj, if I may.
Okay.
Actually, two questions. One is, would it be possible to circulate this analysis to members of the LAC, because it's not part, as you mentioned, of the agenda materials?
Yes, my intention was to include that calculation at the LAC meeting, but I assumed there would be questions at this meeting, so that's why I kind of brought that up to support that, as most of people in the meeting are from the LAC, but definitely we'll include that calculation in the LAC agenda.
Okay, and the second question was more substantive, and that is the expenses that could be attributable to wear and tear or other kinds of depreciation on the equipment. Are they reflected in these transfers at all?
Depreciation is not reflected in here, no.
Okay, because as I recall, maybe it might be instructive to look at this back in, well, about 4 years ago or so, when Kirsten was doing the figures, she had two items that would be multiplied by the usage. One was the operating expenses, but then she had something that looked like it was capital expenditures for replacing pumps and things like that, which was a way of essentially accounting for wear and tear on the system due to the transfers. So it might be useful to take a look at how it was calculated in the past. Because I thought, in a sense, that was a way of looking at depreciation and wear and tear factors.
Raj, if you look,
I did notice in her calculation in previous years, she had a $4,100 amount that she added to the expenses, and I was uncertain what that was. And so I will.
It's the contribution to reserves.
So maybe that was a provision for depreciation. We didn't.
Yeah.
into consideration in the 2019 calculation because I didn't fully understand what that was, but we'll look further into that.
Yeah, in a way, as Allison was saying, it was denoted as the contribution to reserves, but since that's a
Yes.
function of depreciation, it seemed to me it was a rather elegant way of apportioning
Okay.
things out.
Yeah, that makes sense. That would make sense to me.
Yeah, there's a line there that's called contribution to capital reserves that hasn't got an amount in it. And in past years, it was an estimate for equipment.
Yeah, she had a flat amount of $4,100 for that in past years. So I just needed to do some looking into that amount.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Raj.
I'll look into that and we'll adjust for that if we missed it.
Raj, in the past, I think before your time, if I might just add, is that there was always an agreement. Well, I say always, not always. We only started in 2008 or something, or 2012, I think. But when we discussed the issue of transfer, there was always going to be a proportion, so that there would be a proportionate recovery from blue water to our reserve. But that reflected always the capital expenditure that we had in that year.
Yeah. So what ends up happening, Brian, is if you're looking at this slide here, the 11,786 transfer to reserves incorporates the recovery from the sale of water.
I don't have that slide. We're looking at.
Oh, we're looking at the 2019 operating results slide that's up on the screen right now.
It's not. I mean, it's
not.
Oh, is it not up there? Okay, I'll share that. Sorry, it must be the old screen. Let me do a new share then.
So Raj, is there any detail as to how you got the 42,800?
The 42,899, that's just a sum of the 15,449 on the screen. Are you guys seeing my screen with the operating result?
Yes, we are now.
So it's a sum from 15,449 to 545. So it's a sum of the operating costs.
Everything except the transfer to reserve.
Everything except the transfer to reserves. And so what I was going back to answer Brian's question. So without the sale of blue water, sale of water to blue water, the contribution of 27,000, you would not have had a positive transfer to reserves or contribution to reserves. So the recovery of costs from Blue Water Park actually allowed you to contribute 11,786 to reserves.
Yes, that's very helpful, Raj. Thank you for that. I guess my point is about the that amount that should be calculated from our capital depreciations. So, for example, if we had a pump that we had to spend 20,000 on or something, the proportion of that cost to replace the pump would come in proportion to the water used by Blue Water and King Edward Bay. And that's what we're not seeing.
Yeah. And that's what I was just saying earlier. I didn't fully understand why there was a flat amount of $4,100 being included in the previous year. So that may have been.
Sorry, Raj, that was also an anomaly. The anomaly was that it was a flat rate. It was never a flat rate. It was never supposed to be a flat rate. That's what it cost from 1 year, and that was carried over. It needed to be calculated each year.
Okay, so I'll look into that.
Thanks.
Thank you. So, sorry, I'm just seeing a text message from Steph here as well, if you bear with me for just a sec. I got knocked off. Are you guys?
It's okay, I'm back. Sorry.
Oh, there, you're back.
That's a long time ago.
Oh, okay. Are you going to take over the PowerPoint again, or do you want me to just share my screen, Steph?
I can take it over if it's helpful. Sorry, I got knocked off.
Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen. So
Sorry, guys.
I'll turn control over to you. So we're on the capital results slide.
Okay, this one.
Yeah. So 2000.
Well, actually, Raj, I did have a question on the expenses though. So if we're moving on, could I just interject that? Last year, there was a significant amount of water that had to be transferred from, I guess, was from the cove system into our system to cover mostly, I think, the deficits due to the leak. How were those expenses apportioned?
Cove system to Blue Water.
Yeah, there were a lot of water trucks that had to be used to top off the system at the height of the leak and the summer shortage.
I don't have a comment on that. I'm going to have to look into that. I will note that and get back to you. I would assume that they are included in the supply and services cost of 13,707.
Yeah, that, I mean,
I
you
believe
had
it was
mentioned,
just the trucking costs that would have been charged to you. I don't think we charged for the water. So just the transportation costs were charged. If I'm just going off of memory, I do recall that as you mentioned that. And so just the cost of trucking the water over would have been
mhm.
confirm that for you.
And I guess one last question then on the expenses, and my screen doesn't show them, so I can't point to the figures, but the professional services,
Steph,
you were
can you
saying
go
that.
back? Oh, we'll get Steph to go back one slide, sorry. Yeah, that.
Okay, thanks, Steph. Appreciate it. Now the professional and contract services.
Yes.
Okay, that's significantly over the previous year, and you said, and what we had budgeted for too, and you said that was primarily urban systems?
It's primarily urban systems for problem solving with the KEV system.
What were those problems?
I'd have to look into that again as well. Maybe is Glenn on this call? Glenn might be able to enlighten us. I thought I saw him earlier. No, maybe we lost. I can look into more details. I mean, that's all the detail I have on those invoices from urban systems at this point.
Okay, great. No, we can discuss it, I guess, at the LAC. Thanks.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so if no more questions, can we move to the next slide? So the next slide is the capital slide. And yeah, Steph was right in moving forward. We had nothing budgeted in 2019 and there was no spending in 2019 in capital on the KEV system. So I really don't have anything to say for 2019 capital results. If we can move forward to the next slide, Steph. So the next slide here is a 5-year operating financial plan for KEV. And most of the expenses have been increased using assumptions. So essentially CPI based assumption for most expenses. And in operating, and one of the things to note here is we will be watching the sale of Blue Water or sale of water to Blue Water Park. We've increased it from what was in the previous 5-year financial plan, which was $10,000 to reflect a 5-year history, excluding the anomaly year of 2019. And can we move, any questions on the 5-year financial plan? If not, Steph, can we move to the next slide, which is the 2020 to 2024 5-year financial plan for capital. So we have a capital provision of $46,700 in 2020. We had a provision for the replacement of a pump. From what I can see, I had just looked this morning at 2020 year-to-date results. Nothing has been spent on the pump replacement, so I'm going to have to check with our Director of Engineering if that pump requires replacement. The description in the capital project was to put a provision in if it required replacement. So if these expenses are not required, typically what we do is we only take money out of the reserves if these are required. If these expenditures are not required, we will not take the money out of the reserve. And we will be working on the next 5-year financial plan in the upcoming months. Any questions on the 5-year financial plan for capital? Yes.
Raj, could you please comment on the residential water meter upgrade plan, which shows a big jump in 2022?
It's essentially, I believe it was a project that was originally requested for 2020 and it was pushed to an outer year. I believe 2021 was an analysis and 2022 was implementation, if it takes place.
And what is the improvement? What's the essence of the
I
improvement?
believe the push there was to go to automated reading of meters. Right now, people go out, we have meter readers that go out and scan every meter.
Right.
The idea here was replacement with new technology, meters that could be read automatically.
Okay.
Yeah, there was also a discussion that would enable owners to read their own meters automatically as well. The technology exists, and that would be useful. Can I just ask about the new mainline and water meters? Firstly, I understand the provision for replacement or repairs is as much a placeholder as anything. I mean, there have been no repairs, but why is a new mainline required and water meters? Are they for new developments or new builds?
It wouldn't be new. I mean, the description is a little bit misleading. It should be water main repairs. It's just a provision if in case any water main repairs are required, that we can go out and conduct those repairs without holding a meeting and having, or going to council.
So it's a placeholder.
It's a placeholder, exactly.
Yeah, we're not anticipating the expenditure unless something does require repair, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, Raj,
Yes.
what is Allison? What's the difference then? You've got the next line, which is provision for replacement and repairs of 10,000. So what's the difference between that line and the new mainline water meters if new mainline water meters is supposed to be water line repairs?
I'd have to go and take a look at the detailed description for each of those requests, Allison, in the 2020 capital plan. I don't have that information in front of me right now, but to me, they look the same when I look at them. Perhaps at the time it was envisioned we needed that the provision for replacement and repairs is probably for water main and just a general provision. And perhaps it was envisioned that.
So something's twigging in my memory.
Yeah, I'd have to go. I can
the meter.
Yeah,
the meter on the main line between King Edward Bay and Blue Water Park, did it need replacing?
Yes.
After this meeting, I can have a look at the capital requests and get back to you guys on that.
Yeah, that meter was replaced in July 2019, Allison.
Okay, so that's not it then.
No, you know, in February at the meeting, we talked about deleting one of those $10,000 figures. I mean, at one level, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just a budgeted amount. It's not a commitment to spend it. So,
however, it does contribute to the anticipated costs and the elevated water rates that's been proposed.
Actually, it doesn't impact the rates because all of these items are funded through your reserves. So your rates are I mean, the contribution to reserves, the annual contribution to reserves impacts your rates, but direct capital spending does not necessarily, unless your reserve balances are depleted. And we find that contributions of all the systems to reserves are quite low in comparison to what's required or what the recommended level for reserves would be, generally speaking, but yeah.
So if I may make a couple of little points, a small one and a larger one. The smaller point is to do with the residential water meter upgrade. That is, Michael's already mentioned that there has been discussion about people reading, and there's no reason why individuals couldn't read and report on their own water. That would be one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is the automated one that you've suggested, which is a lovely thing to have, accurate and timely and so on. But there should be some cost improvement because we wouldn't have to send a truck out every single day. We could have that done automatically. So there's at least an hour of someone's time plus the capital charges of a truck that we should see recovered, and that should be included in the figure in some way. And now the larger point, though, has to do with the pump replacement. And this is what we were saying from the previous discussion about the capital recharge. Now, who should be charged for that? Should that come out of King Edward Bay capital reserves, or should it come from in proportion to the users over the last few years? And that's what's not been calculated. And that's the essential importance of calculating the costs of Blue Water's use of the water and use of what's being produced here. It's really, they've used 67% or 63%, I've forgotten the exact figure, of all the water. Then 63% of that should really go to come off the Blue Water capital, not King Edward Bay. And that was what the agreement was when it was first discussed, I think just before you arrived, Raj, and that's what's not been happening subsequently. So
yeah, when I look at this, I mean, again.
Good morning.
Uh-oh.
Hi, guys.
Okay, be quiet.
Should 63% be charged? This is just a question back to everybody. I mean, there is a recovery being made from Blue Water Park in the operating statements, which is going to reserves. And if we're including, if we do include a depreciation factor in that as well, or a capital provision, we are recovering costs from Blue Water every year as we go along. So would we not be double charging them if we were to actually try and take money out of their reserves in addition to recovering money annually from Blue Water Park? It's just a question.
it's an important question, and it's exactly the question that I was asking you a couple of years ago when I was trying to get a precise algorithm for how this is calculated, and we still don't have that. So if in the charge, the unit cost for water that's being recharged to Blue Water, there is a portion that's associated with capital recovery, I'm happy. But there's not. There never has been. It's actually been calculated separately, and that's what the 4,100 was. That was used kind of repeatedly over a couple of years.
That's correct.
So we need, that was never brought into the unit costs. Now, how we do this, I don't care. But the fact is that there should be a calculation for costs just like this. If it did cost us $25,000, then there should be a recovery, and that's not technically occurred. That's why we need to have.
And I can't say it hasn't, because if that $4,100 was intended to cover, which is what we talked about earlier, if it was intended to cover the capital usage portion, or I mean, that's what depreciation is essentially. There has been an additional 4,100 charge for the past 5 years, with the exception of 2019, in addition to operating costs. So if that 4,100, which was called the transfers to reserves, was used, essentially that is about 40% of your annual capital provision that has been included for KEB in past years. So essentially you've recovered about 40% of your capital budget from Blue Water Park from 2014 to 2018.
Very nearly. Oh, somebody's nice picture there.
Wasn't me.
So
I'm a lot older.
So I just need to get an understanding and need to figure out that 4,100,000 was in fact for capital, which it seems it would have been.
Well, it's a possibility, but the trouble is it's a possibility, isn't it? It's not clear. And so that's what I'm trying to urge you to do. Can we have a very clear algorithm that would remove any discussion about this at all? That's all that's required.
Yeah.
Let's have a clear algorithm that we can all agree on, and it'll be fine.
We will do that.
Raj, Don Heff here. If it helps, when you go back and look, it seems to me that you're taking a different and I think completely justifiable approach to the pump replacement. But if I recall correctly, the way it used to be done is that either each year, or each other year, there was an expense put down for pump replacement of about $1,200 or so. And I think the last time I saw it, it increased to about $12,000. So it seemed to me what was happening was that notionally, there were expenses taken or programmed against the capital reserve to replace the pump, but they were spread out over several years rather than having it consolidated as you did here into 1 year. So that might help in backtracking some of the changes. The other thing I would ask you to do, I guess, is to see when those capital transfers were accounted for in the transfer costs to Blue Water, because my recollection is that they were not done in 2018. but that's, again, it's just a recollection.
Yeah. You know, from what I just looked at the calculation this morning, and so 2018 did include that provision for
It
the
did.
transfers to capital. 2019 did not.
Okay.
So 2019 is the only year that a transfer to capital provision has not been used in the calculation.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so can we move to the next slide, Steph? So the next slide here is just a reporting on the 2019 year-end reserve balance. So the 2018 opening balance of reserves was 40,600, and 11,786,000 was contributed to the KEB capital reserve. There was no use of reserves in 2019. So the 2019 ending balance for available reserve balance for capital works is $52,386 for KEB. And can we move to the next slide, Steph? And the final slide on the financial presentation, an approximate value of or an estimated value of the infrastructure replacement cost. So it is anticipated that if the entire KEB system needed to be replaced, it would cost $3,700,000. It's just to provide context in terms of the available reserve balance to the estimated infrastructure replacement cost. And KEB system is I believe, the newest system out of all of the water systems, relatively new water system. I think 12 years old, is it? If I'm not mistaken.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think I've got 12, 15 years old.
So how much of that is water tank and treatment facilities versus pipes in the ground?
I don't have a breakdown in front of me. That number is based on, I'd have to take a look, but I can give you percentage. My numbers are kind of smudged here. I can give you percentages offline. I believe the majority of it is the supply and distribution system. So I would say the lion's share is the supply and distribution system. I believe I had provided Brian with the, I think last year via email, I had provided him with a breakdown between the, on the TCA database, the contribution year to date of the supply distribution system, the equipment and the buildings. And so I just got to go back to that email and break out the percentages, and you could apply the same to the $3.7 million. I just haven't done it here.
You did, Raj. There's an email somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I do have those numbers. I have them in front of me as well, and I would have done the calculation, you guys, but the printout from my printer is completely smudged and I can't read the numbers, so my apologies for that. Otherwise, I would have done a quick calculation while we're sitting here in terms of the percentages between the three components of the system. So the components of the system are broken out into the supply and distribution, equipment, and buildings. And I can see the buildings are a very, very small component, and I believe I would guess 70%, 70 to 80% is the supply and distribution system.
So does buildings include the water tank?
So it would include, yes, the water tank is, I believe, thrown into the supply and distribution system.
Oh, so that's a different, yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing, if that's okay.
Okay.
That's the end, right? Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Over to you, Steph, I guess, on the agenda.
So this is question time in general before we move on for the finances, before moving on to Public Works section. Any final questions on finances? Don?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just switching off of mute here. Judging from the figures, it looks to me like the projections were just basically on the current King Edward Bay system. Is that right, Raj?
That's correct.
So that doesn't include projected revenues or expenses with the intake of the Arbutus Ridge project.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. All right, thank you. And thanks for your presentation too, Raj. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So, Patrick, sorry, I'm just inviting someone else to the meeting has sent a request. Just a moment, please.
I'm just going to go back to your comment, Don. So we will in the building of the next financial plan, we should have, I wasn't aware of the Arbutus Ridge project projections or how they would impact the future. So I will work with our director of engineering in the development of the next 5-year financial plan to ensure that those projections are incorporated into the 5-year.
Yeah, I was thinking there'll probably be a number of, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was thinking there'd probably be a number of new connections.
Okay.
There'll be both new connections and unconnected lots.
There will be 9 new connections as part of the phase 1 development, and about 25 to 30 in the future phases. So I have a meeting this week with the engineer and developer for that project. We can get some better sense of the we know the expected time frame for phase 1, but then the future phases, we can get some better information on what they're expecting as a time frame for those.
What's phase 1, Patrick?
Phase 1 is the nine lots. I guess it's phase 1 of phase 2, right?
Well, the 9 lots are the ones down by the road, right behind the park?
The 9 lots are up the new road.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And there's also some additional infrastructure that's brought online as part of that phase 1 development. So the new well and pump station, and new water main as well. So that would affect the asset inventory.
Patrick, do you mind if I just making a query about the 2 lots that are separate from the others that are on the north side of the LAC boundary, just on the road? And I just wondered whether or not they're part of that planning also. Are they part of the 9, or are they 9 plus those 2?
They're not part of the 9. No, so that would be part of the future phases of King Edward Bay expansion.
I have a question. Patrick, I'm Don Hath. We haven't met except virtually here, but it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, and welcome to Bowen. I'm just curious, how is a new development like the Arbutus Ridge incorporated financially into the current system? That is, there obviously are a number of new lines built, as well as you were mentioning a new pump and of course, wells. Those, I guess, will affect our the estimate we just saw about the replacement costs. But are there direct costs in our capital budget to incorporate Arbutus Ridge, or is that borne wholly by the developer?
It's borne fully by the developer.
Okay.
And the developer is also contributing to our ongoing study of the aquifer, and part of the outcome of that study would be looking at possibly improvements to how the current system operates. So We may
Okay.
be the current operation where one of the wells is used and the others not used very much. Yeah, that may not be the best approach. And so we'll
Right.
get better information on that. And we may be making some changes as a result.
Okay. But once the lines and equipment are deeded over to the municipality, then they become the water district's responsibility to maintain the capital reserves and upgrades and things like that, right?
Well,
So our budget is going to look quite different.
Yeah, they become the municipality's responsibility. So yeah, they would be municipal infrastructure that is being built by the developer would become part of this King Edward Bay water system.
So King Edward Bay LAC will remain financially liable for a system managed by the municipality and owned by the municipality.
I'm not sure what you mean by financially liable. It's a municipal system.
Local service area.
Service area.
Yeah. You got more people than share in the operating costs.
Yeah.
Right.
It's King Edward Bay LAC that pays for it.
Right.
No, the King Edward Bay local service area residents pay for it. You guys are only seven of you.
Yes.
Or 5 of you.
That comes as a relief to me because I don't have the $3 million.
But we are talking about those residents within the LAC service area. In that boundary. Yeah.
Just to remind everybody, there was a report done, and I don't know, back in November of 2017. We had quite a discussion about the lots and the plan, and I'm assuming the plan is similar to that discussion.
And I mean, we can share more detailed information about the development plans, either separately from this meeting or as a follow-up meeting with the LAC. We can get into that in more detail.
There will be LAC meetings coming up in October. If you guys want to ask Patrick to prepare information about Arbutus Ridge for that meeting. Does anybody want to take a look at the Vancouver Coastal Health Report that was provided by Public Works? Or do you have questions about that? I can screen share it, or if not, it's in your agenda package. It's 55 pages, so maybe not screen share, but if you have any questions about it, Patrick can answer them.
There really wasn't any anomalies.
That's what I got out of it too, that everything is safe and well taken care of. So maybe that's why there's no questions.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's 10 o'clock now, and I think there were a few follow-up questions that Raj said he would answer subsequent to the meeting. And as I said, there'll be an LAC meeting where you can do a recommendation regarding the budget in October. Does everyone feel ready to close off for today?
I think Renee wanted a chance to ask some general questions, didn't he? Or has he left us?
No, he's here.
I'm still here. No, I just wanted to make sure, and my question has been answered, whether we could ask questions as we go. I might have a general question. Well, I do have a general question. And it's really a question that comes out of ignorance about the meaning of the word aquifer as it applies to Bowen Island. I mean, is it a unitary concept that covers the island, or are there separate aquifers? One on the west side that encompasses Blue Water, King Edward Bay, and Bowen Bay. How is it thought of? And the reason I ask this question is the public meeting, which I think was last year, when there was a presentation by the engineer talking about wells, he made a point, as I heard it, which was that a well that's dug, a well accumulates water, but there has to be another well within some rather short distance of it to detract from either well's capacity to accumulate water. So I know this is a very broad question, but I'm just interested in what is implied by the use of the word aquifer for the future, and in terms of the interests of each of these separate areas: King Edward Bay, Blue Water, Arbutus Ridge, Bowen Bay. Am I making sense?
Yeah. So an aquifer is, similar. I mean, you could think of it similar to, a lake. If there was a number of intakes drawing water from the lake, they, provided there's enough water there's enough sustainable yield from the lake to supply all those systems, they could all operate and not necessarily affect each other. And similarly, if you've got a number of wells drilled into the same aquifer, provided there's enough recharge to sustainably supply all of those users, then they could all operate without necessarily affecting each other very much. Where you'd run into issues is if you have, over the long term, the demand, the withdrawal from the aquifer exceeding the recharge, then there would be a bigger problem. Similarly, if there's too much water being pulled out of a lake and it's not recharging at a rate that can sustain that. And that's really why we've started, or well, not started, I mean, we're well into it, looking at a study of that aquifer that all of the water systems you mentioned draw from.
Well, may I interrupt? Yeah. Is there a different aquifer for the east side of the island and for the north side of the island than the one that we're talking about, I think, on the west side of the island?
Yes, I mean, aquifers are, they're analogous to watersheds, right? Where you're, if you look at people are familiar with how surface water works. I mean, water drains to a certain area depending on the topography, and that's classified as a watershed. And there's groundwater watersheds as well, and they don't necessarily line up exactly with the surface topography, but in general, they do align somewhat with the surface topography. So yes, I mean, we would have different aquifer on the east side, and on the east side, we're actually dealing with surface water, so we have different issues than the west side systems, which rely on groundwater. But yes, to answer your question.
Okay,
generally.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I've got a general point I'd like to make about the RFP that's been proposed in the documentation, which is on our minutes, but we haven't had time to go through it. It's perhaps something we should be doing at our LAC meeting. But I just noted that that in that RFP, nowhere in that document is there reference to the community or consultation or seeking guidance of any kind from the public, the people, the users. And I think that's a bit of a disappointment. It would be helpful if we did have some commentary about that, some reference at least to the users of the systems, particularly. It's very important. Proposals are going to be made, and those proposals are going to shape recommendations to council. And but the way it's formed, the way it's structured, is that there's no contribution that anyone in the community will make to it. It will go from the consultant, whoever becomes a consultant. It'll then be the administration will, municipality might will consider making proposals, and that will go to council. And it seemed to me that it would be helpful if we had some contribution. Obviously, there are technical matters that the general public, including me, would not be suitable in advising on, and I'm not suggesting we do that at all. But there are issues associated with each kind of proposal that's being expected of the consultant who gets employed. Terms like make favored proposal, I think, is a term that's used, or and it just seems to me that wouldn't it be helpful if we had real criteria on what the criteria for such a favored proposal would be. Concept of financial equity, for example, would be useful to have embedded within those expectations in those proposals. So it's a general point. Maybe we'll take this up again, but before we come to dealing with all the recommendations that such a consultant will make, it would be just helpful if the LAC or LACs generally, or if the public in some way was gifted the opportunity to make some comment on, first, the criteria that's being used in these so-called best alternatives, and secondly, in the actual proposal themselves.
Yeah, thanks for that. And certainly the intention is to involve the community and the LACs in these discussions. And I can see your point about how the RFP was structured, in essentially keeping the scope of the consultant's work mostly limited to technical assessment of options. And we've included in there that the options would be reviewed with BIMs, and that we would confirm what the preferred options are. So within that, there's a process involved that we've kept offline from the RFP. So essentially, there's a step there that we would be doing consultation, undertaking consultation with the users, and we would have support from the consultants in terms of technical information. We're just considering now a substantial addendum to the RFP. A number of questions have come back and that we need to clarify. The thing about including sort of specifically, we need consultants to be coordinating and running a public process for us, is that's going to or could escalate the costs substantially. So we'll have to think about that is if we explicitly include, we want to have, X number of, assume that you're going to be participating in X number of community meetings as part of the options evaluation process. We can do that. And seems to be that's what you're suggesting we should do.
Patrick, can I just intervene? That would be helpful. That's one way of doing it, but that's not the only way to do it. I don't want to drive costs up and make it difficult to manage. But maybe if you alter the proposal slightly and make clear that this is a preferred technical solution. I mean, if you just called it a preferred technical solution, in a way that would get rid of the problem of, because then we have to have the community solution. What's the preferred community solution here? So,
Yeah.
and then we have to have a discussion about what the balance might be. I don't want to make this more complicated and more expensive than it need be.
Yeah, no, and we can certainly do that and clarify that. And that was the intent, because a number of questions came back about, well, you know, what about how does the financing of this solution work, which is a whole other step in the analysis. And that's where these questions about equity and what's fair really come into play. So, you know, if we have for example, if we have a large shared reservoir tank as a preferred technical solution, you know, the financing approach for that would, you know, obviously have to lean a lot more heavily on the users that are driving the need for that. So, you know, where you would have a blue water park system that really needs that, they would have to, the financing and the contributions from those users would have to bear the lion's share. You know, the current King Edward Bay residents who have enough storage and a system that meets their needs would be a lot more limited. It may be that the future phase of the King Edward Bay development would contribute in that, well, they're already planning to build a reservoir tank that's high enough to service the development they've got planned. So putting that money towards a shared tank might be a fair solution. So there's a lot of questions that have to be resolved around how you would go about implementing the preferred technical solution and sort of taking that technical solution and making it into a community solution that, you know, identifies, well, how is the fair financing and implementation and operation of that solution going to happen.
Patrick, that's very reassuring. Thank you for that. So I'm glad you're thinking along those lines. That's very helpful. And in general, without having talked to any of my colleagues on the LEC about this, we would really want to be in a position of being supportive, publicly supportive of the recommendations you finally put before the council. And with any luck, we will be part of that decision or part of that proposal. And that would be the ideal solution for us. If we could be helpful, we will be.
That's the intention for sure.
So I just want to provide information I've recently received regarding the aquifers question. It's an image that indicates 5 aquifers on Bowen Island. Can you see my screen? So the blue lines here are dividing up the areas where the water draws.
So is there sort of 2 areas?
So I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, I'm looking at the 2 on the west side.
Okay. I'm gonna stop talking now though, because that's all I know.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay. So whoever sent you this, I guess maybe it's a Patrick question. Looking at the blue square, does that include, is there any overflow of blue water into the right hand or the more northerly long rectangle versus the sort of square?
That's a good question, and I'd have to get.
It looks like there's 1 aquifer for blue water if I'm looking at roads on the map, and the other includes Bowen Bay and King Edward Bay. And
yeah, no, it's Glenn Skirhan here. I sent it along. So these are the provincially mapped aquifers. There are obviously going to be nuances within each of those, but these are the ones that are recognized by the province. The most northerly one is King Edward Bay and Blue Water. The smaller one in the middle is Bowen Bay and Tunstall Bay.
well, that's interesting because that supports, you know, back when King Edward Bay was first down, there was lots of testing done, and I know the Bowen Bay people were very keen to make sure it wasn't going to impact them. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I'll share this with you by email.
Oh, great. Thanks, Steph.
And this is a question that I'll follow up with our hydrogeologist consultant who's helping us with the aquifer study. Because the aquifer study does involve extensive monitoring of wells and all in Bowen Bay, as well as Blue Water and King Edward Bay. So I will follow up on that question.
So we've got all the right equipment in all the wells now to do the monitoring?
Yes. Yeah, they've been there for, we've had the right equipment for several months now. And we're, moving forward with the monitoring program as planned.
So how are we getting monitoring information from all the private wells?
Well, it's not all the private wells. We are monitoring some wells on the Stewart property next to the King Edward Bay development. And that's, so it's our equipment that's monitoring those wells. So we're getting that information through our consultant, through the hydrogeologist. And our operations staff are assisting them with the study.
So, anybody have anything else?
Just a thank you for your contributions here. Your presentation has been very helpful to have that, and also very reassuring. So thanks very much.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Yes, and I agree with that too. Support that.
Well, thank you as always to the LAC members for all of your investment, commitment, energy, and support, and to the members of the public who attended. Hopefully you've been able to benefit from this information. And we look forward to seeing you in October.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks very much.
You.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.